to another week with me, Susie Pettit, your certified life and wellness coach. I am thrilled to be in your ear today, as I am, or if you're watching this on YouTube, as I am every week, but especially this week because it's our 100th episode, warriors. Yay! And to celebrate our 100th episode, I am bringing an amazing woman on the show. I have an amazing guest for us all today. She is the best-selling author of 5 books on the psychology of happiness and fulfillment, including #1 international bestseller, The Self-Love Experiment and Adventures for Your Soul, and our book of the month, The Joy Seeker. She is an international life coach, a speaker, a retreat leader, and she empowers people to trust and believe in themselves so they can live to their highest potential. Come on, she needed to be on the Love Your Life show. She's been named one of the top 100 women to watch in wellness by Mind Body Green, and she is one of the freshest voices in mental health and wellness. She's featured in the Chicken Soup for the Women's Soul, has been named one of Entrepreneurs' must-follow Instagram accounts for inspiration, a top Facebook account for daily motivation for Mind Body Green. I could go on and on. Her name is Shannon Kaiser. I have been devouring, if you've seen some of my Instagram stories, I've been pulling one of these daily cards every week. I am loving her book, and I am thrilled to bring on a woman who the small part of her book says, let go of what's holding you back so you can live the life you were made for. Joy Seeker. Let's go. Thanks for coming on the show, Shannon Kaiser. And hello, warriors. I have Shannon here. And Shannon, thank you so much for joining the show. We had a little bit of technical difficulty, but that makes it all fun in this day and age. Thank you. I've wanted to have you on the show for a while, and I think it's interesting how the universe works in that here you are at a time when a lot of us need some joy in our lives. And I am grateful because every time that I do listen to you or read your work or see you on Instagram, I do feel love and support through the wires. And so could you tell our listeners? Yeah, I know. It's a nice piece. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about you and how you got to doing what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's wonderful to be here with you today. And today I am living my dream life. I'm doing exactly what I love to do, which is being of service and helping others through my own personal experience and everything that I've gone through. I absolutely love to write books and I love to help people. So I have 5 books out on the psychology of happiness and really following our heart and getting unstuck. But it wasn't always that way. In fact, 10 years ago, I was in a completely different career. I was in advertising and marketing, and I thought that's what I wanted. I was climbing the corporate ladder, and it looked like I had it all. I was making a lot of money. I was working with celebrities on really big multi-million-dollar accounts. Wow. But I would cry myself to sleep every night. Oh. And inside, I was suffering with eating disorders and drug addiction silently. And I went to the doctor, and they diagnosed me with clinical depression. And that was a turning point for me because I came home that night and I realized that I was living a life that I thought I should live, not the one I really wanted for myself. And I had a moment where I said, well, what do you want? And I had never asked myself that. I mean, I did, but it led me to what I thought society told me I would want. And I never really went inward. And so I went on an inner journey that led to discovering my true purpose, my true passion, which is writing and helping others find their true purpose and passion. And I left advertising, left depression, left the eating disorders, and have created this life full of authenticity and joy. And it's beautiful when you step into your power and realize the world doesn't have to tell you who you are. You are unique in your own being and your own self. And that's really what it's about, shining your light and being who you're meant to be.
Yes, I'm like, preach. That is this podcast show called the Love Your Life Show. And I do speak of that importance because I really was living for my first 35 years of life, a life that I did not feel in alignment with myself. And I think that is why your work has always spoken to me and why I appreciate your work so much. And yet, when I was asked and when I was sort of living that life that I thought I should live, that sort of piece, I if someone were to ask me, what was your purpose, Susie, or, what do you hear? I think I would have frozen, or I felt panic, or almost an inner critic, like, what's wrong with you? You don't know what your life is. And how do you assist women? Because that is something that, I am a coach, and that comes up, that it's like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm here for. How do you assist people to help them lean into that and what their purpose is?
I think it's interesting because it's that question in itself that helps us wake up to there could be more. Maybe we're here for more than what we've been living. Because a lot of the times we feel like maybe what we're doing is what we're supposed to be doing until we get that kind of inner recognition that maybe I'm made for more. And that made for more is the sweet spot where I work with people and talk to people, and why I write my books, because I've lived in that I'm made for more kind of area where you were made for more. And what it starts with is getting clear about your values and what you care about on a core level. And a lot of my work is grounded in this. I have a quiz that you can take to help discover your true purpose, your values, who you are meant to be in the world, based on the values that you have and the values that you live. And what I realized in advertising is I was not living my values. And that's why I was so depressed. I wasn't allowing myself to be creative and express myself creatively. I didn't have any freedom. I didn't feel like I was making a difference. Selling, soda and potato chips was not something that felt very high vibe for me. And so it's kind of comes back to that.
Yeah. And that it's so neat that you say that, because in the beginning of this book, the Joy Seeker book, you do say that you always felt that, I highlighted this whole thing, but you said you always felt like something was wrong with you, because you always, were sort of questing for more, and, what is, like, sort of what's wrong with you. And I guess that's what I think alerts many people, that like inner rumbling, or that, sort of that spiritual awakening of, oh my gosh, not this, to get them to move forward more.
And I think that is something that blocks us, that joy. I call it a joy buster, where we feel like off track, or we feel like we're behind, or we feel like we're not where we should be. And I lived about 3 decades there thinking that whether you're looking outside of yourself at all of my friends who were getting married before me, or looking at other people building their businesses really fast, or your neighbor who is getting something you don't have yet, we're looking outside of ourselves. And what I recognized as I was writing Joy Seeker and kind of teaching that process is, as long as you're looking outside of yourself, there's always going to be not enough. It's always a lack of a connection to yourself, because you're looking out there at what everyone else is doing, whether it's through comparing or jealousy, or you're just looking at that next thing. When I lose the weight, then I can find my soulmate. When I get out of debt, then I can move to the place I really want to move to. Or it's always this and we're keeping our life in this perpetual kind of limbo stage of feeling like we're not good enough right now. And that's the turning point. Right now is all we really have. And right now, we can invite joy into this experience right now, no matter what's happening. And I stopped looking for that fix outside of me, and instead went on an inner journey to realize that we are perfect and unique as we are.
I mean, amazing. And so you just sort of had that realization overnight, like, look, Shannon, now you're perfect. And
yeah, it all just happens like snapping the fingers. No, it does require a lot of work. And I think that's the misconception. When we go on a personal growth journey, or we start to get into our spiritual kind of awareness, or we start reading books, working with the coaches, a lot of us in the beginning, I know I did, we think it's going to happen, and we're looking for that big fix, that aha moment, that, right, yes, everything's better. Yeah.
I'm there.
But the truth is, totally. And I feel like this needing to be there is the number one thing that blocks us from fulfillment. And the whole book of Joy Seeker is about teaching us how to be present with whatever's happening, and realizing that life is an unfolding creative journey. So my personal growth journey is ever unfolding. My self-love experience and learning to love myself even more, even though I wrote a whole book on it, is always evolving and growing. Because if you're not growing, then basically you're dead. So we have to reframe how we're looking at our life. And it's not about getting there to be fixed. It's about the unfolding and learning more about our true self, connecting with the love that is within. And once I did that, these realizations started to happen more rapidly because I wasn't looking for a fix out there. I was allowing myself to be the student of life. And it's kind of like we're here on planet Earth as a big classroom. And I started to look at everything I was experiencing as a lesson. Just like when you go to a university, you learn a lesson and you have that aha moment. I'm passing the test, I'm taking the test, and you move on.
Yeah. And you're always moving. I love that. I used to be a high school teacher, and I often will say to my clients, I'm like, this is an education. We're on this, journey, and that it's not one and like, and I do think that I used to think that like, when I get there, then I'll be happy. Or when I do this, when I get when I have the third child, then I'll be happy. Or when I have the house, I'll be and then you get there and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And to be open to that discontent, to know, or that discomfort, that nothing's gone wrong here. It's just sort of there to tell you something.
Yeah, and I think we live in a society that really pushes that. We live in a culture, no matter really where you are, especially the American culture, but a lot of societies are push, push, go, go. And up until really recent months, we've been on this constant hamster wheel of pushing to the next thing. How often do you get what you wanted and you stop and say, wow, I'm here? We're automatically on to the next goal usually. And it's caused this exhaustion and this kind of deep inner angst. And so it isn't until we really let ourselves rest and let ourselves go into our true self can we realize and see that the awesome opportunity awaits for us to be present with who we really are. So often we're running from who we really are, doing what we think we should do or what other people want of us. And when I started to do research for the book, the Joy Seeker book, I came across a study that was the #1 regrets of the dying. This woman in the UK, she wrote a book on it, The Regrets of the Dying, but she was a nurse. Yes, exactly. And it was a very popular study. She interviewed all these people and on their deathbed. And the #1 regret was, I wish I would have lived a life true to myself, not the one others expected of me. Followed by another regret of, I wish I allowed myself to be happier. So that shows me that so many of us are living for others at the sacrifice of self, and we need to reverse it. And when we reverse it, we realize self-love is not selfish. It is absolutely mandatory because we are here to learn more about ourselves and grow into who we're really meant to be.
Yeah. And that for me was a big struggle because I was definitely raised in this environment that it was like, no, Susie, your needs are secondary. Your needs are like, it is selfish to think of yourself first. And it took me a long time to sort of reverse that. If listeners are interested in starting on that journey, what do you advise? Sort of that flipping of like, oh, it is important to take care of myself.
Yeah, it's interesting because we many times get these patterns and these beliefs instilled in us through our parents, through our teachers, through our mentors, through society. It's passed on. So first recognize, is this my belief? Just asking that. You'll start to see in your heart of hearts, perhaps it's been a belief that has been ingrained into you from a mother, from a grandmother, and that in itself can shift it. But another thing that we can really look at is how we're showing up in the world, in the sense that there's a whole chapter in Joy Seeker called compassion fatigue, or when you care too much, it hurts. Because compassion fatigue is something that is affecting many of us. It's an epidemic, and a lot of people don't even know what it is, but you care so much, especially if you're an empath, you want to help others, mothers, right?
Yep.
You want to show up for people. We're doing it at the sacrifice of self. And I noticed in my own journey, in the first couple years of my life coaching business, I would get these chronic headaches. I had major digestive issues. I kept gaining a lot of weight. I would pick up the call at all. I had coaching clients call random hours. I never had boundaries. And I wanted so much to help them, but it was always at the sacrifice of self. And it wasn't until I realized I was suffering from compassion fatigue. There's a lot of symptoms. It's when we show up for others, but what's happening is we're actually hurting ourselves physically, emotionally, even spiritually. And so it becomes about recognizing, how can you fully be there for others if it's only a half version of you? If you're constantly having physical health issues, or if you're feeling guilty or feeling shame, then that's not how we really show up for each other. So these are little things that we can do by turning it around and saying, okay, well, today I am going to have boundaries, and I'm going to start to say no when I really want to say no. I'm going to start to rest if I need to rest. And guess what? I'm not going to feel guilty for it. If I need to take a nap today and clear my schedule, then I need to do that. And it really does come back to getting in touch with your true self and honoring who you are.
Mm. Oh, I really love that you speak to that. And it really is, for me and for many of my clients and I know the listeners, really this sort of shift of letting guilt and shame run the show, and trying to get into those inner beliefs and inner thoughts and inner programming as to what has been going on here. And I know in one of your book is this Joy Seeker. Again, you've written many books. 5 books. Have you written 5 books?
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Joy Seeker is the one I'm speaking of right now. And you have different joy jaunts in it that I like. And one of the ones that speaks to this is this media detox that you're talking about really right in the beginning, that I think is so helpful for people. And that's something that I speak of also, is like, pay attention to what you're feeding your brain, because when we are in these beginning stages of relearning that self-care is not selfish, and putting my needs first is not bad, and it's not awful. If we still have the old influences around us, it's hard to sort of reprogram that programming. So I know it was important for me to sort of turn down the volume on some of that, the society messages that no, it is important for mothers to slay themselves, or women to put everyone else's needs before their own, to the point of when you are having physical ailments, as you said.
Yes, exactly. And I think that this is really important. The media detox is one of the most important things that we can do, even right now with everything that's going on in the world. There's a part of us that feels like, I got to be in the know, I got to be in the know. But if you think about it, your spirit and your true self and your essence is always in the know. Always. When we get connected to nature, when you go put your bare feet into the grass, when you let the sun come on you, you get back to your true essence. And so sometimes when we fall into the trap of thinking that the media is giving us information, we're losing the true information with our divinity, if you will. Mm-hmm. So what I talk about in Joy Seeker about the social media detox or the media detox is, think about how you feel after you're consuming it right now and every time, no matter what year it is really, but especially right now, when you look at any of the mainstream media, it is programmed to make you feel fearful, worried, because it keeps you hooked in. So they have higher ratings and can sell you more stuff. It's a game. And so if we detach from that, then we start to realize, well, what kind of life do I want to live in my own sovereignty? And something that's very interesting that I started to implement is social media and digital detoxes completely. So we are really addicted to our phones. And one day I forgot my phone at home when I was heading out to my parents, and I thought, I can go back and get it, or I can choose not to have it. And I ended up spending like a whole weekend without my phone, and it was liberating. I didn't miss anything. I was with the people I love. And I think if we all start just doing this, we give ourselves permission to be in our life instead of living through a screen.
Yeah. It's really nice. And I have to say, as someone who does this for a living, it's hard. I've started that on Sundays. I'm like, you will not pick up your phone. You will not look at it. And Saturdays, I'm more like subdued, mini diet of that. But Sunday is flat out nothing. And I know that the first couple Sundays, this is just probably within the last month, I know the first couple Sundays, it's like I'm, reaching for that fix. And it's like, no, Susie, you can't do that. Like, stop. But I really appreciate what you're saying. And it can be broken. And it is freeing once you get out of the habit of it. When you're sort of stopping that craving, it feels a little uncomfortable. But then after a while, it's like, oh no, this is fine. And you recognize you didn't miss anything. The stuff is still there. It's all going on. And you just, if anything, you're feeling lighter and more connected to yourself, and you can deal with it better. I really
that's exactly it. You have more of a grounded approach, and I think you nailed it. You can deal with it, and we show up in life more fully, because a lot of the things, and this is what I talk about in Joy Seeker too, is we give our power away. And whether we're giving it away to the media or other social media accounts we're following. Now, by all means, if you're finding accounts that are uplifting you, I had to go through my feed and look at all the people I was following. And if they didn't resonate and they weren't making me feel uplifted, then I just unfollowed, blocked, or kind of hid them for 30 days because I wanted to make sure my space on social media was very uplifting and joyful. And that's what I'm committed to on my social channels too, is making sure that I'm putting positivity and joy and love out in the world. So I think that's an important part because it can be a beautiful experience, and there are good news channels. There are journalists that are really doing good news, but we have to seek out to find it. So you nailed it though. Yeah, it's really about coming back to yourself and looking at where you're giving your power away.
Well, and I also like bringing that into relationships also, because this idea of how do you feel after you've been scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or Twitter? How do you feel after you hang up the phone with that friend or relative, or that is telling also when we're trying to reprogram these beliefs that we've had in our, sort of implanted in us since youth, that has been important for me to recognize sort of boundaries there with relationships and what I let in and where I give my power.
That's so important. And I think right now, with where we are on planet Earth with the coronavirus and everything that's been happening on the planet, what we're often seeing right now is versions of people that maybe we didn't see before, whether they post something on Facebook that we're like, oh, I didn't know that's how they thought, right? And I think what's important about this time is to recognize that people are having an opportunity to show more of their real selves. And because what's happening is collectively we're in a lot of fear for many people, not everyone, but that fear makes people go into a defense mode, and sometimes they protect what they know to be very good and dear to their hearts. And so I've noticed in my own life with personal relationships, I'm starting to see people share things or act in ways that I have never seen before. And this is about giving each other permission in our own families. Just because someone doesn't agree with this doesn't necessarily mean we have to unfollow them, I believe, because I truly believe that we live in a world that's diverse for a reason, so we can all learn and grow from each other. If we're only closing ourselves off into a little bubble, how I see the world, and I only follow people, then I feel like this is doing ourselves as a disservice to humanity. So it's a balance, right? It's about protecting your own mental health first and foremost, but also realizing that we can be compassionate to our brothers and sisters or family members or other people who are going through it right now, because there are a lot of people right now, especially right now, who are wanting and needing to be heard. And so if we can give them a platform, I think that helps as well.
I absolutely agree. And I guess that all comes back to sort of this choice that we can have. And I know for myself, I recently saw something on social media that said, don't just unfollow all the people that don't agree with you, but remember when you used to sort of be in that unaware bubble too. And for me, specifically with race, that was really helpful, because I know, I grew up in an atmosphere in an all white town, and I had very white ideas and was sort of in that belief like, oh no, everything's fine here. And then had some great awakenings and continue to have them. And yet seeing that post, I was like, oh, right. Okay. So, 5 years ago, I was in that same position and I was just innocent. And so in keeping that person as my quote unquote friend on whatever, then, there I keep that opportunity open for learning and open-mindedness on both our sides. So I do appreciate that a lot. Yeah. And
yeah, and I think that's beautiful.
well, yeah, and that there are also some toxic relationships that are not, it is, again, where are you going to give your power? Like, are you going to keep talking up against a brick wall?
That's exactly
No change? I do.
That's exactly it.
When you said, this is sort of allowing people to show more of their real self, I think Maya Angelou or someone quoted, like, when, someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And that is something that I have sort of led with my relationships that are more like bringing into my circle. Like when people show me who they are, okay, I'll give them room to grow, but I don't necessarily need to bring them into my inner circle of energy every day to sort of come up against this brick wall.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think our relationships also become mirrors, and they become lessons, and they are our greatest teachers. And so when we're in a relationship, we can hold up that energetic mirror and say, what's reflected back to me? What is this bringing up for me, as you know, and teach and share too.
Yeah, challenging. I often say, like, if it triggers me, it's about me. And I'm like, oh, darn it. Like, oh,
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's about the work, right? The
yeah.
inner work. And the inner work is part of a beautiful journey. And it may seem intimidating, but the more we do it, the more rewarding it becomes, the richer our life becomes.
All right, if you promise.
Keep going.
I'll keep at it.
I
But
promise.
I know, and you do speak of that in your work, which I really do enjoy. This sort of, you give women permission to lean into that discomfort, and sort of understanding. One thing I read of yours that I really like is you sort of learn the way on the way. Like, we might have this vision of where we want to go and what we want our life to be like, but not exactly sure about the how. But leaning into that discomfort, can you speak a little more about that?
Absolutely. I feel that this is one of my favorite kind of mantras, if you will, is we learn the way on the way. So often we have a goal or a dream, or we think about where we want to be and we don't know how it's going to happen, or we don't know, we start to get panic or anxiety, or we start feeling frustrated because it's not here yet. And so we don't take steps. We don't
Mm.
read the book, hire the coach, or meditate, or think about what we really want with the vision board or any of that. We just freak out. And what happens is we have to recognize that each step we take reveals the path. And the
Mm.
universe works in a way that it will support you, and the universe always rewards motion, always. But if you're not taking motion and you're just panicking in your mind, then it can't support you. And so you have to take one step anyway. And once you do, you get more clarity. This is the path, I'll keep going. And you start noticing the more steps you take, the faster you're able to live in that place of abundance and joy, and you're manifesting what you want. And I also say, the how is in the now. We don't always know how it's going to happen, and we worry, how am I going to get the money to do this dream, or how am I going to make sure my kids grow up, and all these things we worry about. But right now we return ourselves to this present moment, because when we're thinking about the future or the past, we're often in anxiety or depression or frustration. But in the present moment, we have our power. So the how is in the now. You return to the present. And if you find yourself in anxious thoughts, you catch yourself. This is one of the joy jaunts in the book. You catch yourself and say, I'm going to turn my worry to wonder. I'm worried about what's going to happen in the future, but I wonder how beautiful it's going to turn out when I align with love. I wonder how fantastic it's going to be when I take a step today to call that person I need to call to move it forward. And you turn your worry into wonder. The how and the now is probably one of the most profound steps we can take today, because it gets you out of your own way.
And I guess it's that fear that sort of like, there is a point of fear that we need to feel it and do it anyhow, but when we spend too much time thinking, it just paralyzes us, and then we end up not doing anything. I really appreciate that reframe. And instead of worry, you can wonder, like, how will this all work out? Well, let me see, let me take one step forward and get out of that paralysis.
It's so true. And I do think that the worrying is one of the things that blocks us the most. The overthinking,
Mm.
the over
That was
worrying is a form of fear. It really is. And fear has been taking control for too long. It's about regaining our power and saying, you know what? I see my fear, but I recognize that it is an illusion. It is not my truth. My truth is that I do have the power to take steps forward. I do have confidence today. I'm going to take one step forward. I do have support around me. You start talking yourself out of that fear and into a place of more love. Moment by moment, each time we do this, we start to shift our whole experience.
Okay. And what I'm hearing with you is a lot of compassion and kindness directed towards yourself on this journey. Is that something that you have had sort of this in your whole life, or is this something you've worked with or worked towards?
Absolutely. I think the foundation of all of what we're talking about, and I wrote a whole book on it called The Self-Love Experiment, the book before Joy Seeker, which is how to be compassionate to yourself. And it really is and comes back to self-compassion, because if you're doing all of the work and you're showing up and you're like, I got this life thing, but you're beating yourself up, or you're saying, gosh, I'm not where I should be, or I feel like I'm just a big fat loser, whatever it is you tell yourself about yourself is hindering you, because that is also an ego projection. It's also a fear-based reaction. And guess what? A lot of it is actually programmed into us from other people, like a belief our parents believed and we pick it up, or something that a family kind of tradition has been carried down, or you see it on TV or the magazine covers. It's so much, again, about what's outside of you. And we believe what's outside of us is our truth, but it's what's inside that matters. And so when you return to your inside, you hear a voice that says, maybe you're not good enough, but then you say, well, wait a second, is that really me? No, that's not me. My spirit, my soul, my true self, my heart knows that I am a beautiful child of the universe, of God, whatever you align with, and you get back into a place of aligning with your truth and realizing all of the shame you say to yourself. And I take people through that in my books. Each one of my books, I have a different kind of meditation that you can go through to detach from the fear, ego, mind, because it does hinder us, and it tries to make you feel like you're not good enough, so you can't live the life you're made for. It doesn't want you to live in a place of abundance and love, because you won't need it. And there's a whole chapter in Joy Seeker where I talk about that, where your fear can actually be your friend if you recognize what it's actually trying to do, which is that it's trying to stop you so you can still need it. But as soon as you live in a place of love, it's like, oh, she doesn't need me anymore. So what am I going to do? Okay, goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. See you later. And I appreciate you addressing that, because, a listener listening to you might just be like, yeah, well, she's just full of self-love, but it doesn't just happen that way, as it didn't for me either. I had a very big inner critic in my head. Is there one sort of step or action you direct people to take to when they are initially beginning trying to be kinder to themselves or see themselves through more compassionate lens that you could suggest?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things we can do. I think the first thing is something very simple that I do is a see it, stop it, shift it. Where you see this so often, and for many decades, I thought that inner critic was me. I thought I was ugly, fat, unlovable, not worth being on earth. But I realized, wait, this might be an ego. This might be a fear. So you see it, you step aside from it. You step aside and say, well, wait a second. I don't have to identify with that. It's telling me who I am, but do I believe that? So you see it, and then you stop it in its tracks by literally confronting it like we just did, and then you shift it. And this takes moment by moment. So shift it would be like, maybe there's a belief that, I'm not good enough. And you shift it and say, well, you know what? Today I did the best I could, and that's enough. As you go to bed each night, you start to talk kindly to yourself. Another thing that I do in my retreats, which is a very powerful exercise, especially for women who have a hard time accepting their bodies or looking in the mirror and saying nice things about themselves, is mirror work. And this is, of course, many teachers do this. Louise Hay does a lot of mirror work, or did mirror work.
Right.
But you look in the mirror and you start to compliment yourself, or at least be gentle with yourself. For years, I would hate and pick apart myself when I was brushing my teeth. And then it got so bad, I wouldn't even look at mirrors. And I realized that this is hurting myself, because I'm not allowing myself to see me. I'm not really appreciating me. So looking in the mirror, pay attention. This would be a step. Just pay attention to how you talk to yourself, and start to think about your whole day and how much you're attacking yourself, and start to turn it into more love and compassion. It starts with compassion, and we can do that through self-care too. If you start to take better care of yourself, you start to uplift yourself and celebrate the little victories.
I love all those pieces, Shannon. Thank you for sharing, because I do think, the first step, or the first thing that you talked about, the see it, stop it, and shift it, to recognize that the thought that you're telling yourself in your head is not you, that does not have to be your voice, and to just sort of to see it, to catch it, and to stop it, and even if you shift it in a small way, to just say, okay, I notice I'm thinking that thought, but that isn't me. That can be really instrumental. I love that you bring up mirror work. I'm not sure I've spoken about that on a podcast before, and that is something that was so difficult for me at first. And I remember, I think I listened to like something with Louise Hay midway, and it was more like a middle advanced message from her, where she's like talking in the mirror about how much you love yourself. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I started instead just saying hi or good morning, Susie, like to the mirror. And I would encourage listeners to just try that, like to just look at yourself and say, hey, how you doing? I think Hayes or other people are like, say, hey, gorgeous, but I understand some people might not be there yet. But looking at yourself in your eyes can be quite confronting in a way where it's like, oh my gosh, she's in there. And it's a beautiful place to start. And I thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's really neat.
Yes. It's a powerful activity, another thing that we can do, as you were saying that, is to do, I like to write, of course, and writing a letter to your future self can help. Like, future self, help me through this. That's very much
Oh,
something that's helped me,
yeah.
because here I am living my future self, but 10 years ago I was depressed, crying on the floor, addicted to drugs, and I mentally wrote a letter to the version of me that made it through, the one who could look in the mirror and be kind to herself, the one who was abundant and happy and joyful in life. Because the future self is you. It's part of you. It's just we haven't met up with that person yet. And so you align with that. It's really aligning with your best self. But on the same note, you can write a letter to the pain point. And for me, it was the fat on my body. And I went to my belly and I said, dear, overweight belly, why are you here? And you start to ask the part of you that you dislike the most, whether it's the nose or the hair or the thighs. We all have something we don't like about ourselves. And when it comes to compassion, learning to accept yourself as you are is part of a journey to really understand self-love. But you can do this by getting in touch, by writing to yourself and saying, why are you here? What message do you have for me? And, for me, it was a profound experience because it said, I'm here to help you love yourself no matter what. It doesn't matter your size. Your size has nothing to do with your capacity to love and be love in the world. And that was like, for me, it was mind blowing.
Wow. Oh, I appreciate, I'm really glad that you mentioned, I've written to my little Susie, like my former self, and sort of I'm here now, I'll protect you. But I hadn't thought to write to my future self, and I'm going to try that because I love that idea, and just sort of bringing that, like, that wiser, older version of us, like, okay, what do you have to teach me, and can you help me in this moment? And
Yes.
yeah, and I just fill with hope even thinking about it. So what a neat place to go, which is great. Is there anything that you're working on right now that you're especially excited about?
Yeah, I am. I'm working on 2 new projects. I have a card deck that's going to be coming out next year with Sounds True, the publisher, and it's called Unshakable Inner Peace. And it's a
Ooh.
card deck that's like an oracle deck, and it's
I mean, I got
derived from all the
this. I
principles
love
we've talked
these.
about today. Yeah,
Like this,
yes, you
or
have my
like,
Find Your Happy deck.
I
So
love this. But so like that, or like that you,
yeah, so it's going to be this one's going to be special because it's an oracle deck. That's a mantra deck, which is great. But what this is going to do is it's going to have mini collages, and I'm designing it as well because my background in advertising was design. So it's really beautiful that I get to be the graphic designer for, I design those mantra cards too, but it's nice to take all of what my values and skill sets and passions are and put them together. So I've been deep in edits. We're working on the manuscript book because it comes with a little booklet.
I
There's going
love
to be
this
44
book
cards.
too. Yeah.
It's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this one's going to be similar, but it's next level in the sense of it's going to have more journal prompts. It's going to have meditations in it as well. So that's been a passion project behind the scenes. I'm working on that. And then I just launched a quiz that if you want to learn more about your true self, you can go to playwiththeworld.com. It's free, and it's discover your true self. And everything we talked about today, you just 10 questions, takes you through 11 short questions, and then you get a report to help you align with your values and live the life you're made for.
Oh, I'll put that in our show notes, which are www.smbwell.com/100. This is the 100th episode. I just realized, I'm like, woohoo!
Oh,
But,
that's so cool.
I love quizzes, so I am sure that'll be.
I did too. And I was like, yeah, it's so fun. So if you take it, let me know what your results are. I'd love to
I will
hear
let
that.
you know. That's so exciting. I love, and again, I love learning about myself, and that gets back to the beginning of our conversation, and that life really is this journey, and it is learning about yourself. And can I share the first line of your manifesto for joy seekers?
I would love it. Yes.
I would love for our listeners to take this in their heart today, that may you have the courage to be true to yourself and follow through on your deepest desires, as a permission card for us all today, because that is how we are going to live this life that we love and move forward and find that joy when we're listening to those inner voices. I thank you very much for coming, Shannon. Do you have anything left to leave our joy seekers?
No, it's been beautiful to be here with you today. I think the bottom line is know that you have the power within you to love yourself and be happy. And it starts with choosing joy and allowing it to be part of your experience.
Thank you very much. Thank you.